If you're wondering about the change in the architecture of this room, we went to have the table set up because of adding Ed Markey for a luncheon speaker today, so we didn't think you'd mind a little change in the format here to get to hear the latest on where we're going with, or maybe going with, carbon. Indeed, the ball now is in Congress's court. Will there be a carbon policy? Are they prepared to put in place the long-term policies that will support clean coal, nuclear power, and renewables? What role will current and developing technology play in the changing energy landscape? What federal, state, and corporate policies are now needed? Today, we will hear from two prominent members of Congress, a group of talented entrepreneurs and leading business leaders, as well as representatives of national associations that represent the broad sweep of the industry. Indeed, we'll be viewing the emerging energy architecture from a variety of perspectives. Starting us off is Malcom Unsworth, President and Chief Executive Officer of Itron. He was named to that post in March, and prior to that was President and Chief Operating Officer. He joined Itron as Senior Vice President in 2004 when it acquired Schlumberger electricity metering. This spot in the program has a reputation for blunt honesty. Last year, Malcolm's predecessor, Leroy Nussbaum, addressing our forum, said, quote, "France has an energy policy. It's nuclear. Brazil has an energy policy. It's biofuel. I'm not proposing any of them," he said, "but at least they have one. We are not running out of time on this subject. We are already out of time." That was a year ago. So for an update, I'm pleased to introduce Malcom Unsworth, who will give us his state of the energy sector. Malcom. There's a clicker there if you need it.
Are we on now? We on? Thanks, Marty. Blunt honesty. Okay, we'll see what I come up with for the next few minutes. 7 months ago, I became a grandfather for the first time. An 8 pound, 1 ounce grandson with a world of opportunities in front of him. I'm not only telling you this out of pride, but I'm telling you this because his arrival has underlined the way I think we need to look at the future. It's changed my perspective on a few things. A few big things, actually. Namely, why I'm in the business, and how all of our actions now will eventually shape the world he grows up in. Simply stated, the way we manage the world's energy and water will shape this century. Let me say that again. The way we manage the world's energy and water will shape this century. It's a strong statement, but one I'm convinced is true. And it's creating an urgency and opportunity that the utility industry has never before experienced. And Itron, with locations in 60 countries, with 8,000 customers worldwide relying on our expertise, is right in the heart of this transformation. We're providing the world with intelligent metering, data collection, and utility solutions, software solutions. And every day we're helping utilities optimize the delivery and use of energy and water. But today it isn't just about Itron. Our industry is at the center of unprecedented change. Just as technological innovation shaped the 20th century, global energy and water issues promise to shape the 21st century. The shifting landscape will change the way we look at the world, the way we do business, and the way we live our lives. Our 20th century began with mass production techniques, the automobile, air transportation, the promise of the telephone. And it ended with mass customization and lean manufacturing, cellular mobile phones, and of course, the internet. The 21st century promises an even more rapid technological evolution. The management of our planet's most precious resources and stewardship of our environment will be at the center of this transformation. And this demands new thinking, new tools, the right partners to ensure full success. You only need to look at the trends of energy and water scarcity, the projected use and cost, to understand that energy efficiency is no longer optional. According to the Department of Energy, new worldwide energy investment totaled $145 billion in 2009. That's up 98% from 2005. Water scarcity issues will demand conservation driven by technology, and consumers will become empowered in new ways. This means that the speed at which utilities and consumers use data will intensify. At Itron, we're approaching this century and its inherent changes with what we've referred to as essential thinking. It's reality where we are today and where we're going. There are three key concepts to this essential thinking that I want to share with you today. The first is how we apply technology will play a real central role in how we meet environmental goals and mandates. The second, the world's energy needs customized solutions, what we refer to as rooted in reality. And third, empowered consumers will drive change in unprecedented ways. So let's start with technology and its central role in meeting environmental goals. As global concerns around climate change and water scarcity force mandates, the pressure on utilities is intensifying. And I'm not here to continue the debate about climate change. The fact is there are benefits in doing a better job managing the world's electricity, gas, and water. And mandates around emissions and the environment are driven by a number of factors, whether it's global concern about climate change, water scarcity, energy costs, or energy conservation. You cannot conserve what you don't measure. It's essential that consumers and utilities have timely access to actionable data. Another huge driver is policy. Until we have a more certainty on carbon policy, utilities will be reluctant to make investments in new technology. I was recently in Copenhagen for the World Climate Change Summit. At one point, there was a panel discussion with utility executives, and during this discussion, a student in the audience stood up and asked, if a utility makes money by selling energy, what incentive is there to encourage conservation or energy efficiency? Without missing a beat, one utility chief said, the only incentive is driven by compliance with mandates. National focus has shifted away from identifying an energy policy in the US, which, by the way, we still are in desperate need of, as Leroy said last year, to policies that stimulate jobs. I've been here in DC several times in the last year, and trust me when I say the only currency that matters on the Hill right now is jobs. Jobs I can actually get behind that, and I can support it, because not just jobs generated by smart grid rollouts, but manufacturing jobs created by US-based vendors like Itron. And I'm proud to say production of our solutions does create jobs. In fact, we were just awarded a federal manufacturing tax credit acknowledging our recent upgrades to our smart meter factory in South Carolina. This credit allows us to preserve the jobs of hundreds of individuals, as well as hiring hundreds more. Well, let's look closer at how technology allows utilities to positively impact the environment. How will it allow them to face climate change head-on? Actually, how a utility applies smart metering and smart grid technology can play a central role in meeting environmental mandates. These technologies support a clean energy economy by aiding in carbon reduction. For example, given the number of smart meters Itron can produce annually, with conservation demand response, over 1 million tons of CO2 emissions could be avoided. And this is before we factor in things like reduced emissions from fewer truck rolls. The reduction in carbon emission from the adoption of smart metering cannot be overlooked. In fact, the National Resource Defence Council has gone as far as saying that smart meters are essential to saving the planet. These technologies also enable renewable power infrastructure and encourage system efficiency and consumer involvement. And when consumers are more aware of and given choice regarding their energy use, it allows utilities to provide higher reliability while controlling costs. It is time for demand response to be acknowledged in the same favoured policy realms as renewables and energy efficiency measures. After all, demand response is about more than consumers reducing their electricity consumption at critical times. It's about informed changes they can make in energy uses day in and day out. The goal of most energy efficiency or renewable programs is to use less energy and encourage cleaner air. Demand response can further these goals, but we must consider these resources as something more than simply lowering critical peak demand on a handful of just hot summer days. And technology has the potential to touch so much more than just energy. I was recently in India and Africa and a few other countries around the world, and consumers no longer have a choice when it comes to water. Limited supply has forced change in consumer actions. There's simply not enough water to go around. It's a story I'm sure will be commonplace if we don't take action now. Did you know that in certain parts of New Delhi in India, residents have access to water just 2 hours in every 24 hours? They are responsible for pumping water into their holding tanks on their roofs and sustaining it for 22 hours. But guess what I get to tell my grandson? Itron is in India. We're helping Mumbai Municipal Water District secure its water distribution network and water theft, the stem of illegal connections and leakages that result in the loss of 185 million gallons of water every day. In the US, as consumers of water, we're just hit and miss on our conservation efforts. Only when supply is low is our awareness high. I remember actually living in Los Angeles in the 1980s during about a year and a half of huge droughts. I showered with a bucket on the shower floor and then used the water to flush the toilet. Fast forward to present-day California, and water scarcity is again an issue, and its impacts are affecting more than just humans. In Monterey County, where water is pumped from the Carmel River watershed, our technology is helping protect several threatened species in the river, including the California red-leg frog. Our leak detection technology is empowering consumers to stem water loss, reducing the amount of water pumped from the river. And it's all in context with Governor Schwarzenegger's declaration of a statewide water supply emergency. So do the circumstances really need to be so dire before we take action? It's exactly the same hit-and-miss mentality with emissions. Same with carbon. If we continue down this path, conservation will not be a choice. So how can policy help these planet-protecting technologies in place? The environmental benefits of smart metering are clear and documented, but strong motivation, that is, cost recovery, from regulators is required for utilities to invest in technology globally. But let's put the spotlight back on the stimulus plan. Out of the $3.4 billion in smart grid grants that were awarded just 5 months ago, to date, no utilities have come to contract terms with the Department of Energy. We've got to get this money moving. Let's take a page from the water side of things. The administration is moving water infrastructure stimulus at a much faster pace through the Safe Drinking Water State Revolving Funds. So far, the EPA has awarded 70% of the grants have been awarded are now under contract. And don't forget, the body of knowledge is large enough. The need for pilots and demonstration projects is over. Smart grid should not be categorized as a research project or a theme park. It must be projects that are driven by good, solid business cases. The swift allocation of these funds is a must for the benefits of smart metering to be realized. Realizing a global vision for renewable energy-based economies requires extensive smart grid and transmission investments, and they need to come online significantly quicker than they are doing. Second point I want to make, back to what I call essential thinking. The world's utilities needs customized solutions rooted in reality. Across the globe, differences in location, regulation requirements, and size mean different things. The reality is that drivers and needs in Los Angeles are far different from those in, say, Johannesburg, Oklahoma City, Amsterdam, or even Tokyo. It's unwise to think that a solution that's appropriate for a large utility like Centerpoint Energy in Texas is the same exact one that will be used by smaller municipalities and co-ops. Yet so much of the discussion is limited to what the top 20 utilities do and need and can afford. Yet at the same time, we can and should learn from global best practices. In the UK, we're helping the government meet the goal to improve energy efficiency by 20% by the year 2020. The largest energy distributor in France, which is called ERDF, has publicly stated it will replace all 35 million electric meters with smart meters. And here again, Itron's technology is front and center. But this kind of monumental transformation, multiple solutions need to be implemented. And it will take more than one company and more than one technology to succeed, especially when in many parts of Europe the goals change. Like here in the US, some utilities are water providers only, while others provide water and energy. So many of our competitors are focused on the electric side of the smart grid. Itron is moving beyond electricity for smart distribution systems. Gas, for example, we're tailoring our advanced metering solution in a unique business case in Oregon. The utility is using two-way communication using our fixed network technology to gather gas recorder and corrector serial data and monitor possible pipe corrosion using our automated cathodic protection solution. This is opposed to reading the instruments manually and relying on expensive cellular technology. Accessing these readings through our gas AMI network will result in reduced operational costs for utilities. And for water, we're making tremendous headway in making usage information that has typically been static into dynamic, actionable data. As these solutions become increasingly sophisticated, different players will need to work together to create integrated systems. This will require a new view of and new competence in what I refer to as collaboration. Interoperability is critical. My phone, for example, speaks the same language as yours, even though it's filled with proprietary technology. It follows protocols and standards that allow me to read emails from you. But I caution you don't get too confused because innovation and open standards, they are not mutually exclusive. Our industry has been dealing with standards for over 100 years, and today Itron complies with dozens of these standards. Standards are crucial when technology varies so greatly worldwide. For example, on the electric side, there are numerous standards depending on what country you're in. Europe follows the international standard set forth by the IEC. However, not every country in Europe, and there's 27 of them, complies with the IEC. Some of their own, and the utilities within some countries also have their own. The point is, we've built Itron as a company that can provide customized solutions to meet varying requirements and needs worldwide. We're a global company that acts locally. Let's talk about prepayment. Now, there's an interesting subject. Just like we prepay for cell phones, in some countries, consumers actually pay for electricity and gas. I was recently in South Africa, where non-technical losses are 40%. Non-technical losses are a nice word for theft. Itron's prepayment technology is allowing a real step forward in balancing energy supply with theft detection at the residential level. And in one example, after a year-long pilot, we were able to reduce these non-technical losses by 60%. The proven ability to deliver long-scale implementations like these in the field and a firm understanding of utility businesses are mandatory in the new energy and water reality, because these large-scale implementations are complicated. Many go looking for what I refer to as a single silver bullet, but there isn't one. It just doesn't work that way. Hype must be replaced with smart strategy and solid results. The key will be creating systems that leverage existing investments and enable new and evolving functionality. We cannot scrap the world's existing utility infrastructure. Rather, we need to build upon it and be smart about where we invest. Clearly, we must balance environmental sustainability and economic reality because the stakes are extremely high. Utilities will navigate new territory and serve more active and engaged consumers who are evolving, having expectations. This dynamic requires partners and with experience in delivering actionable, accessible data to large numbers of end users. So what about those end users? I haven't said much about them yet this morning. Perhaps I'm saving the best until the last. The question I get asked most frequently as the CEO, hands down, is what is the smart grid? I'm not sure the answer is as important as instead of asking, how will we make the smart grid a reality? The answer goes hand in hand with the last point I want to make about Itron's take on this industry. Our global future depends on creating informed, motivated end users of energy and water. We strongly believe empowered consumers will drive change in unprecedented ways. When people ask me about the smart grid, I tell them it all starts with the consumer. It's the stuff our industry buzzes about in terms of empowerment. Not only will consumers have increased choice, responsibility, and power, but as technologies like solar, wind, and geothermal mature, consumers will become generators and sellers of power. New technology and time-based rates, according to FERC, they have the potential to reduce peak loads between 5 and 12%. And every 15 minutes, we're providing information about how much energy consumers use. In the US, we're going from a monthly meter read to obtaining data every 15 minutes, as was said yesterday by the Oracle guys. But in many other parts of the world, and in many cases, these are developed countries in Europe, they're shifting from reading their meters once per year to reading meters every hour. Utilities will increase the amount of available data by huge and massive amounts. And when you think about the shift this represents, sifting through the data and actually managing it, you begin to realize that we're talking about a very different game. To put this into context, reading a meter once per hour versus once a year increases the frequency by 8,760 times. And in the US, meters are read monthly, and with some states, we're moving to every 15 minutes or an increase in 2,880 times. And many of you in the audience today are aware of the hurdles of complex billing for commercial and industrial customers. Things like zeroing out cumulative demand. Some of you will know what that means, others won't. So when we think of the future and the changes two-way the power grid will bring, utilities now have to think about how they seamlessly and accurately reset cumulative demand over the air to every residence they serve. Does the average consumer really understand this scenario? Of course not. Absolutely not. But we need to get it right, because I can guarantee you that ratepayers won't buy into the smart grid meter investment if they have doubts about the accuracy of their new time-of-use billing solution. This is not simple stuff. It is very complex. It's not just transmitting a monthly kilowatt-hour read. That's just AMR. We're doing that for a long time, and we've got 70 million in the field. It's using all this data correctly to ensure accurate customer bills. There is no compromise. These solutions have to be undeniably safe and reliable, dead accurate, extensively tested, and without a doubt, They have to be absolutely secure. Consumer empowerment will shape industry change in the coming decade, and this trend will become more significant over time. The engagement that needs to happen with the end consumer represents a tremendous shift for utilities. I don't think we should underestimate the fundamental change this kind of two-way communication means as to how we will do business. And for the smart grid, or gas, or water AMI solutions to be successful, we have to get the consumer engaged and on board. Now, Itron's global experience in prepayment systems, smart grid and smart metering and web presentment has made customer engagement a possibility. Let me give you an example. In the UK, the 65-year-old retired mother of one of my colleagues recently paid £35, that's about $50, for a device that attaches to her electricity meter, which is actually located under the stairs, and transmits basic information about her electricity use to an in-home display. The interesting thing to me is that she did this, first of all, because her neighbor got one, but more importantly, she's interested in better visibility of her energy use, because electricity is far more expensive in the UK than in the States. And you all know as well as I do that there's even more sophisticated in-home displays being developed. What I'm trying to convey here is we have to present energy information in a simple and accessible manner. And think about how your grandmother would use it. Like some of the new cars today have a green eco light. It's pretty simple, really. It lights up when you're getting the best gas mileage. Smart grid technology allows the same kind of information inside the home. The smart grid is about the consumer. As we look at ways to, and in conclusion, if we look at ways to create a new energy and water reality, it's clear that the challenge is bigger than any single company or organization. Working together, we can ensure reliable energy and water delivery at the lowest possible cost, lead the way to an entirely new economy, and secure our success, our precious resources for future generations, for my grandson James. The best thinkers with the most direct experience must work together. The importance of this collaboration cannot be overstated. For smart grid implementation to gain momentum, let's move from the vagueness of what's referred to as self-healing to the specifics of distribution automation requirements. Let's move from the growth of the internet as a metaphor to the needed bandwidth to solve the problems at hand and for the future. So let's move from rhetoric to reality, so that we can ensure the incremental progress so badly needed to get this bold undertaking underway. Let's be careful not to promise what is fashionable today, but instead let's deliver what is needed for tomorrow. In the words of our president, this is a time to discover great opportunity in the midst of great crisis. The smart grid and smart metering can be that opportunity. What a great time to be in this business, and I thank you for your attention, as does my grandson James. Thank you.
Malcolm, not so fast. Come into my living room for a second. Have a seat.
Thank you.
I'm going to foreshadow an afternoon panel that's going to be moderated by Matthew Wald of the New York Times. And he clued me in on the tone he's going to take. He's extremely skeptical about smart grid. And what it boils down to in his mind is people are not going to want this kind of investment to save 25 cents when they wash their dishes. They're not going to want to bother with it. And you say, quote, what is smart grid? It's not as important as making smart grid a reality. But for your grandson's parents, what do you tell them about why it's going to make a difference in their family life, in your grandson's life? Why is it important?
Why is the
smart grid?
Why is the smart grid important? Well, first of all, you can build a hell of a lot of meters over the next few years, which is good for Itron. I think that's what Warren Buffett said yesterday about Coke. But But in reality, if you think about where we are, you look at the cost of electricity, and I use the UK as an example, right? UK is very expensive. I probably have the most energy conservationist mother-in-law ever. She even switches the pilot light off on her gas stove. She switches the pilot light off on a boiler. She's on a pension, and it's expensive. So if you can make it simple for people like her, and I had a conversation with a couple of large utilities this last week in New York. When you're a utility, you have no choice to select your customer. You have no choice. So you select a good payer or a bad payer. You have no choice. You have a young lady, a young guy, a very old lady on a pension. So you think about the spectrum of all these people that actually have, and the utilities have no choice but to provide it to them. You want to make it as simple as possible. So if you're putting devices inside the home and allowing things like a dishwasher to come on in the morning or come on in the middle of the night when the electricity is cheap enough, automatically, then you don't worry about it. Because you can send a signal down to that dishwasher or down to that dryer when it comes on at the cheapest possible time, automatically. So you don't get any human intervention. If you don't start doing that if utilities don't start doing that, enabling these smart appliances, we're never going to get anywhere. You might as well bury your head in the sand and say we're going to have an analog telephone system, for the next 100 years. It's now the internet has allowed all this technology. It's exactly the same with the smart grid.
Let's focus on one specific fact that you brought up, that the stimulus plan has allocated $3.4 billion in grants for the smart grid, and no utility has come to contract terms with DOE. Why aren't you and the utilities screaming about this and getting everyone's attention?
One of the things that ITRON does and has done is helped utilities apply for their, help them develop their applications. As far as all of the detail of what's involved with the utility, applying with all of the tax structures and IP, I think there's a number of strings attached to these grants that utilities have now decided, I'm not certain this is a good thing, I'm not certain it's a bad thing, but they've not come to terms with these yet, and they've had 5 months. Will they come to terms in the next 6 months? I really don't know.
One last question I'd like to ask you. There's a lot of concern in the industry about cybersecurity, and one drawback of the more technological we get, the more vulnerable we get. How are you as a company and metering in general as an industry addressing securing the information, this avalanche of information that you see coming?
So from a technology standpoint, you think about a commercial and industrial meter. You guys in your home don't have one of those. Most people don't. And on that device, on that meter, is what they call an optic port. Those optic ports are read with a handheld device that's a magnetic device that fits onto there. That gives you access to that meter. You still need that now on new residential applications with AMI, so you're taking a commercial industrial product now and completely saturating it across all residential homes. That means there's two-way communication, not only from the optic port, but through a Zigbee link and through two-way communication. So what's referred to, that meter now becomes theoretically a cyber asset. If it's a cyber asset, according to the Department of Energy, I think you have to put a barbed wire fence around it. Well, you can't put a barbed wire fence around your house. So what do? You have to have extremely secure processes in place and secure software so that there are many different keys that you can't get through to the grid. What we've managed to do is work with a couple of experts in this, and one thing you don't do is talk about the security of your system. It's just you don't do it. But it's highly secure, and so if somebody got access to the meter, could they get any further into the grid? The answer is no. We've done significant amount of testing with a couple of the companies we use. We've used Idaho National Labs. So we feel very confident that our solutions are very secure. But it is an issue if you've not invested heavily into the solutions.
So Malcolm, you absolutely assure us that we won't all wake up one night, 3 o'clock in the morning, with somebody in China turning on our dishwashers. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Matty.
A few years